All right, they're looking for an equation in slope-intercept form that's parallel to the equation that they've given and goes through the point that they've given. So let's take a look at what we know. Um, we know that we are going to be using a slope of 3 because lines that are parallel all have the same slope. And we will be using, for x and y, we'll be using for x and for y, of course, we'll be using those points. So if we started out with the y equals mx plus b form, and actually, let me just show you something that I can do now. This is pretty neat. I can zoom in on a section. So I'm going to zoom in on it and do the calculations here. This just makes it easier. So if we have y equals mx plus b, and we substitute for y, the y coordinate here, y coordinate is 3, equals m, we're going to substitute the slope in for m, and the slope is going to be the same as the slope of the equation that they gave us. So if that line has a slope of 3, we're going to have a slope of 3 for ours as well. Just a second. Okay, 3. And we're going to use the x-coordinate for what they gave us as the point for x. And they gave us the point 1, 3, so we're going to use 1 for x. And then, of course, plus b. Because what we're doing here is we're trying to find out what's b. 3 times 1 is 3, plus b. And when we subtract 3 and subtract 3, we find out that b is equal to 0. What does that mean? Well, what that means, if we zoom it back out, hope that doesn't mess with your head too much, just zoom in and out, is that we're going to write the equation y equals, we're using the same slope, 3x, because we're using 3 since they had 3, and really it would say plus 0, but we don't write that. We don't actually write that when there's a 0 intercept. Remember, 0 intercept means it's going through 0 on the y-axis or the origin. So we just write it as y equals 3x, like that. And we're done. So, excuse me, we're going to do the same thing over again. And we're going to do that. Let's do this one in blue. And we're going to zoom in right here, and we're going to say, okay, what do we know? Well, we're still going to use, even though they gave this in point slope form, we don't really need to know what point they used. Sorry. We don't need to know what point they used. We simply need to know what was the slope of that line. Because we're going to use y equals mx plus b. And of course, we'll replace y with y. We'll replace the slope with the slope, x with x. And then we'll find out what b is. Well, what slope do they have? They have a slope of, here in point slope form, they have a slope of 4. So we're going to put that in where m is. And let's just underline it. That's the slope. So where we have m, we're going to put 4. And where we have x, we're going to put 1 because their x-coordinate that they gave us here on the point that we have to go through is 1. And they used a y-coordinate of -3. So we simplify this to -3 equals 4 times 1 is 4 plus b. Subtracting the 4, we get -7 is equal to b, and that's what we're going to use when we are writing their. So if we shrink back down again, we can say, okay, they want us to use a slope of 4 because that's what they gave us. So y equals 4x. The line they gave us has a slope of 4. Ours is parallel to it, so it has the same slope. And we just calculated that the y-intercept is -7. B is -7. We don't write plus -7. We just write -7. There you go. And let's go one more for number 11. I'm going to zoom in. Pick a different color. And use green. And we say, okay, if we have y equals mx plus b. We're going to substitute y with the y-coordinate they gave us, 0. We're going to substitute the slope with the slope they have for their line, which is 2/3. And we're going to put the x-coordinate they give us, 0 plus b. And we find out that 0 equals 0 plus b, or 0 is equal to b. Our intercept is 0. Our y-intercept is 0. This makes sense. Let's look at why. It makes sense because if we're going through the point 0, 0, 0, 0, then we know that we're going to have a point that goes through the origin, meaning we've got a y-intercept of 0. When x is 0, y is 0 as well. And every y-intercept has an x-coordinate of 0. So if x is 0, y is 0, we already know the intercept is going to be 0. So then how do we write that equation? Sorry, I know that that's kind of give you a little seasickness there. How do we write that? We write that as y equals the same slope that they used, 2/3 x. And we don't write it plus 0, we just write this the way that it is. And as you can see, number 7 and number 11, they both go through 0, 0. They both have a y-intercept of 0. And so they are direct variation equations. As if you put in 0 for x, you're going to get 0 for y. That's it.